areas, suburbs, location that are going to boom in the next 6, 9, 12 months in the commercial property space. Why am I predicting this? It's purely because I look at market trends, I look at market sales, leasing data, and what people are buying it and what's in demand, and dissect what might happen in the next 6, 9, and 12 months. Of course, I look at data from your important auction houses, data from areas of like on real commercial. We look at research that are produced by the large commercial property sales companies. But the whole main thing about interpreting data to get it right, to look at predictions, is actually getting a whole range of wide data, dissecting it into bite-sized chunks and relaying it back to what's practically happening in the market, and then working out what's going to happen the 6, 9, and 12 months in the market. Now, that's a unique process. It's very much part of the Helen Tarrant thought process, the way that we do transactions, and how we formulate the system around unicorn investing, all around how we can get our investors how to achieve better cash flow, better growth, and ability to do uplift in their portfolios, right? We believe that in order to get ahead of the market, you have to have counterintuitive thinking, but also be able to interpret the data correctly, but match it up with reality to really get the predictions happening. Out there, what you see is economists and reports that are produced based on historic data and potentially the future of that data, right? But you also don't see people who are buyers agents and educators like myself in our unicorn commercial property who take that data, look at what we're transacting, how other people are transacting the market right now, and what does that data mean when they project it 12 months? Is it really going to happen, or there's a gap in the market? Because what usually happens is people follow that report and they get disappointed because that data didn't eventualize, because it was never matched up with reality. And that's what's make unicorn commercial property unique in the market in terms of investing in commercial property and utilizing us as your buyer's agent. Now, if this video is of interest to you, please click the link below. Join one of our communities where you get to see the latest information on commercial property, how to invest in commercial property, but join like-minded individuals as well for a very, very low monthly amount. You can click the link below and that will take you there. Alternatively, booking for your strategy call. It's a free strategy call where we can help you look at the market and how that applies to you on an individual basis as well. But let's go back to what's going to boom in this current market right now. All right, so I want to take it state by state in the 3 largest states that we transact in, but we also transact in ACT, South Australia. We look at Tasmania, we definitely look at WA as well. But at the moment, I want to talk about Queensland, Victoria, and New South Wales, right? Because that's the 3 largest states that people buy in. Of course, there's a lot of people moving to Perth at the moment and investing into Perth, but that is only temporary, not forever. I'm looking at this as being evergreen. So if you're watching this video in 12 months time, this still applies to you. And the biggest boom we're going to see is in fringe suburbs and associated, satellite cities. Right? That is the biggest boom. Look, other people might have told you this, but in commercial property, it works counterintuitively. Now, you need a residential to establish yourself in an area that commercial is going to boom, right? Commercial is the flow-on effect of residential, even though the flow-on effect is much larger. So think of a tsunami. When the first tsunami hits, most people go, wow, that is huge and it's devastating. But the next wave that comes is usually bigger, right? Because it sort of compounds on each other, right? And that's where the commercial property becomes so strong in its investment space versus the residential space, because it compounds on the residential foundations and the wave is higher, which means you get higher returns in cash flow, higher returns in capital growth, and your potential to uplift, it's much, much higher than residential. So if you haven't started investing in commercial, make sure you check out my other videos on how to invest in commercial property and the differences between residential and commercial to highlight for you how to get started. But coming back to that compounding effect, when we're looking at fringe suburbs, we're looking at established but similar suburbs that has already boomed. So for example, I want to use Tweed Head as one of the examples in New South Wales. Tweed Head looks very, very much like Byron Bay 10 years ago. It's got the infrastructure, it's got the people, but it hasn't had the boom yet, but it's got some of the residential hallmarks, right? And it will start to have house and land packages there. It will start to have more affluent estates there. And then the commercial space is going to change. There is still quite a bit of vacancies in the commercial space and a lot of industrial being traded around the Tweed area. But in order for it to really boom, we need to get away from the industrial space to more that retail and office space, because it's the retail and office space that people can afford to pay more per square meter. In the industrial space, people are paying maybe $150 a square meter, maybe even $200 a square meter. In the office space sector, people are paying $350 a square meter, $400 a square meter. In the retail space, people are paying anywhere from $600 to $800 a square meter. So the land value and the value of your space is worth more. So we need to make that transition, and that will probably happen the next 5 years or so. It won't be straightforward, but it will happen because the area is still gentrified. Area is still becoming lifestyle driven, right? So that still needs to change. So when I'm looking at areas that's gonna boom, I'm gonna look at areas like this. There's pockets like that that's already starting, which means you are gonna pick up on the additional cash flow if you buy in now, and later on you're gonna pick up on that growth as well. But when we look at areas of Queensland, we're looking at inland suburbs of the Gold Coast, inland suburbs of the Sunshine Coast, because the strip near the water is already well overdeveloped. It is also really expensive and not affordable, but the inland areas where people are landlocked and cannot go are going to be the key areas of growth. We've seen a lot of little suburbs around the Sunshine and Gold Coast area that are inland that are booming, right? So we're not talking about, where Mains Beach, we're talking about Caloundra, we're not talking about those, we're talking about more inland areas. We're looking at, when we're looking industrial, a lot of the developed areas are going to be those newer suburbs that are coming up, right? The Jimboomba's, right? That is on the other side of the Gold Coast, right? And when you go inland from the Sunshine Coast, you're going to find a lot of little pockets, right? And those are really those key areas that you will find that are going to give you the cash flow now, because people aren't buying into those areas at high cash flow, right? Because they aren't buying there at a high enough rate. So what does that mean? It means that if they've got $1 million and you want to be buying either in central Gold Coast versus in more regional areas or more inland of the Gold Coast, most people are going to pick the central Gold Coast and accept a lower return in terms of cash flow and growth, because they're accepting security in established areas. But in truth, you should be going to those fringe areas in that, but make sure you do your DD properly, right? Make sure you really do understand the area when you get into it, right? And that's where you need a professional team like us here at Unicorn to really help you dissect the area. But let's say you're going to those areas, you might be getting a higher cash flow than you are in central Gold Coast. So in those areas, you might get higher cash flow, and that high cash flow might be a 7% or 6.5% versus a 5.5% or 5 or 6%, right? It might be that, right? So you're getting a higher cash flow already. But back end right now, it might look a bit stagnant, but in the next 6 or 9 months, there's more projects coming into the area. There's going to be more growth coming into this area. And then in the next 2 years, boom, it's going to boom in terms of the growth of that property. And I'm meaning like we're talking 40 to 6% growth, right? And you're getting the cash flow as well. You refinance and you go again, right? Before COVID, during COVID, areas like Arundel was getting rebuilt in the Gold Coast, right? You were buying to warehouses somewhere between $800 to $1 million. Today, those warehouses are 1.6 to 2.2 million, right? That's what I'm talking about in repeating itself, but more in that fringe inland suburbs of that Queensland area. But also when we go to regional Queensland, if you can afford to go up, when we're talking about $3 to $5 million purchase, that's where you're going to get your higher yields, but also going to be outdoing the market in terms of producing higher returns, but ability to create the uplift, but also have back-end growth as well. Because it's all about building that unicorn portfolio, not searching for the unicorn, right? Most people search for the unicorn. That's the fundamental mistake most people search for. They search for the unicorn where they're trying to get the cash flow, the growth, and the uplift in one. What I'm saying to you is you build a portfolio, or you look for the opportunities in the market where you can snap up those opportunities that may have the uplift 3 or 5 years down the track, but will have cash flow instantly, will give you growth in 2 years time, and then give you the uplift within 5. That is where you go needs to be setting when you are doing your first commercial property purchase. And that's what we're really good at here at Unicorn Commercial Property, part of the Helen Tarrant team. We help you dissect your future goals, break it down, work out what it is that you need to start with, a profile of the first property, and then knowing that if you hit the mark of your first property, it's going to get to your second and your third and the fourth. And that's why I encourage you, if you haven't done it already, booking for that free strategy call, because on that free strategy call, you take the market and dissect it and blend it to your own individual needs, and that sets the strategy for you. But But if you're still learning, still dabbling, you want to learn more about the commercial property space, join our community of like-minded individuals for a very small fee per month. You get access to our webinars, our meetups, our events, newsletters that gives you an updated view of the commercial property space so that you can implement those statistics and data out there into the real world as well. But let's quickly just come back to areas in Victoria before we finish off this video. Now, areas of Victoria, we're going to see areas of Geelong. We're going to see areas around the Great Ocean Road. We're going to see things like Warrnambool. We're going to then see Metro Victoria and also then the strip like Shepparton, Euroa and areas of Seymour going out towards New South Wales into Sydney, right? So those areas, when we're looking at fringe, we're looking at satellite places. So for example, a Geelong, a Wollongong, a Newcastle, those are your fringe satellite cities. A Toowoomba, right? Those areas in different states I've just mentioned are your satellite. Those areas have the density of people coming through, the tenants you're going to need to allow you to have that boom effect, right? But we're not investing in 4 or 5% yielding properties there, because if you invest in 4 or 5%, you're overpaying. You're looking for the gem in there. You're looking for a property that is going to give you the similar returns as you would in the city. So if Sydney's doing 5, you want to be getting around 5% in those areas as well, right? Or even better, because we've done deals with our clients in Shell Harbour that sits somewhere between 6 to 6.5%. And Shell Harbour is just outside of Wollongong, right? We've done deals for our clients in Toowoomba that's sitting around that 6.5%. In industrial, when most industrials now in Toowoomba are trading around that 6% mark, right? So we're doing better than the market is doing for our clients because we know where the opportunities and how to look, right? Again, if that's what you want, make sure you're booking for that strategy call. But on top of that, I really want to hone in. These satellite cities have the power drawing people in there, especially after COVID. They have a hub and they have the need, right? And the residential is already established. And what happens when residential is established? Commercial property comes along and it compounds like the second wave, right? It compounds on top of residential, but much bigger in terms of cash flow, growth, and uplift. And that's what you're looking for in a portfolio when you're investing. Now, let's quickly just finish off with wrapping up in South Australia, ACT, and Perth, as well as calling quickly about areas in Queensland. Now, Queensland's very, very large and there's many, many opportunities, but make sure you do not get burnt by areas that's already had its boom. You're looking for areas that hasn't boomed. You're looking for the right cash flow markers in terms of your returns, but you're also looking at implementing the data that they've got into reality, as in try to predict the growth. Because without growth and you're just getting cash flow, you're not moving your portfolio forward. So really be careful, Queensland. It is a bit of like a wild, wild west there, and the yields and returns are everywhere. So you make sure you do your research. Make sure you really understand what you're looking for before you move forward. Now, when you are looking at South Australia and ACT, they're great because they've got no stamp duty. So it's great if you want to leverage a little bit higher. But of course, you've got to match up your yields against the other capital cities. So make sure you do that. But do not go too far out fringe in South Australia because it can be too remote, really hard to resell your resale value, right? It is important. So make sure that in South Australia, we tend to stay in the hubs where, again, that demand is. ACT, you're going to find your biggest bang for your buck is going to be your retail, followed by office, followed by industrial. So your retail actually comes first and foremost before industrial because it is built differently, right? When we look at WA and Perth, people just be careful in the next 12 months that it's not a ride for the 12 months and then you get burnt and sidelined for the next 3 to 5 years, right? Because you've got to buy in at the right returns, and around a 6% return in Perth is not the right returns, right? You need to get close to 7. If you're buying in 6s, go back to Brisbane and buy in Brisbane, right? Don't get fooled by the fact that you're in a rising market. Remember, rising tide lifts all ships. You don't want to be that because you'll be coming down with the tide and you'll be coming down hard. Tassie, a little bit more remote, so you've got to compensate with that return. But of course, look at your back-end capital growth. Let's get back-end capital growth towards the main city. So again, comes back to your strategy. What's going to boom is we're going to see satellite cities, fringe suburbs, right? And I've mentioned quite a few in this video, but if you're getting started and you're just starting out and you don't know how to get started, connect with us, booking for your free strategy call, join our community, let my team help you at Unicorn Commercial Property build the profitable portfolio that you deserve through a commercial property that gives you cash flow, growth, and uplift.